In the war against faith, the new atheists make some pretty big claims. God is not only a delusion, but dangerous. And the answers to the fundamental questions of life aren't to be found in the heavens, but the laboratory. The field of science is full of many unanswered questions, which is probably why so many people study it. But some are suggesting that certain ideas are being suppressed, even expelled. As Nixon's former speechwriter and civil rights lawyer, Ben Stein's had some formidable foes, but perhaps none as big as his latest opponent. He's taking on Darwin.
It's the kind of thing where you just learn to keep your mouth shut.
I have been told to shut up.
We were accused of being diabolical, theocratic conspirators who were trying to...
Challenging a 19th century scientist may not seem film-worthy, but as the makers of Expelled found out, Darwinian evolution is a sacred cow in science, and anyone who tips over that cow better watch out. I spoke to Ben Stein to find out why.
We find Darwinism lacking a great many answers. We suggest a possibility that there's another theory that might answer some of those questions.
One possible theory is intelligent design. And if challenging Darwin is sacrilegious, endorsing the idea of a designer behind creation is downright heretical. Scientists who have been denied tenure, grants, and silenced for daring to challenge Darwin's theory are featured in the film. So are their opponents.
Intelligent design is not a research program.
And it's all propaganda.
It's already generating criticism for being a front for creationism, the belief in the Genesis account of creation. So why is the film generating so much attention?
There's a giant metaphysical implication, which is if there is an intelligent designer, if his name is God, if he is endowed with a spark of the divine by virtue of being children of God, then there are consequences to killing us. There are consequences to all kinds of behavior which are lacking if we're just descendants of a mud puddle.
Above all, Stein says the film is about free speech, the right to ask questions, especially in science.
Assuming it all did happen by random mutation and natural selection, where did the laws of gravity come from? Where did the laws of thermodynamics come from?
It's these kind of questions that science journalist Denise Lodde dared to ask. And daily, her post-Darwin blog is flooded with hate mail. Still, every day she writes about new discoveries and evidence that life is anything but random.
There's considerable evidence that our universe is fine-tuned, in the sense that the smallest deviations from the way things are would have made life impossible. The big problem, as I said earlier, is that the more we know, the more it does look like it was designed.
O'Leary believes that designer is God. Still, she says the evidence speaks for itself. Recently, she and McGill neuroscientist Dr. Mario Beauregard took on another taboo subject, the soul. Atheists are materialists, which mean they deny the existence of anything immaterial like the mind and soul. But the two found there's more to our brains than matter, and laid out their case in the book The Spiritual Brain.
In general, people who have an active spiritual life are happier and healthier than people who don't. Now, that raises an interesting question, doesn't it? If the atheists were right, what we should expect to see is that people who do not belong to a spiritual tradition are happier and healthier. But we actually see the opposite. Now, the atheist would say, well, yes, religion is a delusion, but it's a useful delusion. Now, that doesn't sound right to me, because delusions are not useful.
But what about immaterial things like love and justice? Are they delusions too? And what about the questions we have? Where do they come from?
A dog doesn't think about what's going to happen after he dies. He doesn't know that he will die. But it's a very normal thing for a human being to be able to think about those things. And once you start thinking about things like that, you start asking questions. Well, If I can think, isn't there a mind behind the universe? If there is, does he or she or it have plans for me after I die? And how can I find out?
It's a complicated equation that has puzzled the greatest minds. Is there a formula that can crack why we exist? Professor Robert Mann is the chair of the physics department at the University of Waterloo. You could say mathematics is his first language, and it's a crucial language to speak in understanding where we come from.
Well, and where existence comes from, not just life, everything. From this original theory that is...
But along with the numbers, his faith is a big part of the equation, and why he's a physicist.
There's a common rubric that science is against faith, but actually that's, quite frankly, not always true. First of all, there are many, many scientists that do believe in God and that are Christians. At a personal level, I think I have found, for the most part, science to deepen my faith, uncover more things, perhaps, about God that I think I otherwise would not have appreciated.
And Professor Mann is in good company. Some of the biggest advancements in science came from the faithful, including Sir Isaac Newton.
I think I would regard Newton as probably the greatest scientist that ever lived, even better than Einstein. He basically founded what we would call modern science, and he did so many fields. He did astronomy, optics, mechanics, etc. And he understood that mathematical descriptions of nature really were the right way to go to make progress.
So the skies are opening. But even with the incredible advancements that have been made since Newton's time, there are still a lot of gray areas. Explaining these areas means asking questions and probing deeper, not shutting any possibilities out. And despite all the challenges and doubts and accusations, faith is something that has stood the test of time. And this latest challenge isn't necessarily bad news.
I think there are several things we can learn from Dawkins. One is that Christians really need to be able to explain what they believe and why.
What he says about quantum mechanics is that if anybody tells you they understand it, that in itself tells you they don't. Which is a bit like saying what you could say about God, isn't it?
Much in the same way that when I'm confronted with a challenging question in physics, I don't run away and give up. When I'm confronted with a challenging question in faith, I'm not going to run away and give up.
Should we be angry at an atheist writer or get upset, or should we actually just make sure we lead a better Christian life? I mean, I've always found that that's a way to really convince people. In 20 years, certainly in 40 years, they will be long forgotten, but people will still be talking about Jesus Christ.
In Toronto, Denise Lodde, 100 Huntley Street.